I think it's very exciting. I think I'm super excited about. I haven't been that excited about like the direction of machine learning and AI, since 10 years ago when Fair was started. And before that, 30 years ago, we were working on, or 35 on convolutional nets and the early days of neural nets. So I'm super excited because I see a path towards potentially human level intelligence with systems that can understand the world, remember, plan, reason. There is some set of ideas to make progress there that might have a chance of working.
Just a historical comment. I've lived through a long period of time when I've seen people say neural nets will never be able to do X. The collected works of Gary Marcus is a nice history of that. So I don't believe those statements anymore because for almost all the things people have said, they can now do them. And people, proving a mathematical theorem used to be something, well, neural networks will never do that. And people just keep moving the task, making it harder and harder. And I completely agree with Dennis. There's no reason to believe there's anything that people can do that they can't do. We may not be able to come up with, they may not be able to come up with profound new mathematical conjectures yet, but that doesn't mean they won't be able to in 20 years' time.
We have the economic capability to keep scaling. If we did that, what would happen? And I think my view is we're going to keep getting better across the board. And I don't see any area where the models are like super, super weak or not starting to make progress. Like that used to be true of like math and programming. But I think over the last 6 months, the 2023 generation of models compared to the 2022 generation have started to learn that. There may be more subtle things we don't know. And so I kind of suspect, even if it isn't quite even, that the rising tide will lift all the boats.
And it computes at data center scales. And together, what's going to happen in the next 10 years, say, John, will increase the computational capability for deep learning by another 1,000,000 times. And what happens when you do that? What happens when you do that? Today, we kind of learn, and then we apply it. We go train, inference. We learn, and we apply it. In the future, we'll have continuous learning. We could decide whether whatever that continuous learning result, it will be deployed into the world's applications or not. But the computer will watch videos and new text and from all the interactions that it just.
For now, at least up until this point, in the past, robots were expensive and there wasn't any robotic data. It was expensive. No one could train big neural net and run them on robots. So the recipe that's been working today did not apply to robots. Changing very quickly. If you look at some of the advancements in robotics that various labs are producing, it's looking pretty good. I mean, from the really cool work from Google, DeepMind, from recently from the Toyota TTIC, Toyota Technology Institute. They've been training really cool neural nets that control robots like flip pancakes and stuff like this. And now it's becoming possible. People now believe that it's possible, whereas before they didn't. So indeed, it is true that one could argue that perhaps the AI that we have aren't quite as complete, certainly not future complete as a robot. But if you look at the advanced progress in robotics, I think in a few years, things will look very, very different then.
Yeah. I agree with that, Ilya. And I mean, we just released our RTX sort of generalist robot system, and it's it's still far from anything that's generally capable of robotics. But I wouldn't hold out that this is different from. I think language was was already very hard, and that was doable. And we have other ways to get around it. I think very realistic simulations, physics simulations, and also just gathering more data from large robot farms, arm farms. I think there's ways to get around this, and then generalizing from general models and into the robotics domain. I don't think it's going to be that hard in the next few years. So I wouldn't over-index on embodied being different, in my opinion.
What do you think?
Well, like Feifei said, GPT-2 made a big impression on us all. And then there was a steady progression. Also, I'd seen things within Google before GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 that were just as good, like Palm. So that in itself didn't make a big difference. It was more Palm that made an impression on me within Google, because Palm could explain why a joke was funny. And I'd always just use that as a, we'll know that it really gets it when it can explain why a joke is funny. And Palm could do that. Not for every joke, but for a lot of jokes. And so, incidentally, these things are quite good now at explaining why jokes are funny, but they're terrible at telling jokes. And there's a reason, which is they generate text one word at a time. So if you ask them to tell a joke, what they do is they're trying to tell a joke, so they're going to try and tell stuff that sounds like a joke. So they say, a priest and a badger went into a bar, and that sounds a bit like the beginning of a joke. And they keep going, telling stuff that sounds like the beginning of a joke. But then they get to the point where they need the punchline. And of course, they haven't thought ahead. They haven't thought what's going to be the punchline. They're just trying to make it sound like the lead into a joke. And then they give you a pathetically weak punchline, because they have to come up with some punchline. So although they can explain jokes because they get to see the whole joke before they say anything, they can't tell jokes. But we'll fix that.
Okay, so I was going to ask you if comedian is a job of the future or not. Do you think it's going to...
Probably not.
All right.
So anyway.
But consequences of it.
So for me, there was something I realized and didn't realize till very late, and what got me much more interested in the societal impact was, like Feifei said, the power of data. These big chatbots have seen thousands of times more data than any person could possibly see. And the reason they can do that is because you can make thousands of copies of the same model, and each copy can look at a different subset of the data, and they can get a gradient from that of how to change their parameters, and they can then share all those gradients. So every copy can benefit from what all the other copies extracted from data, and we can't do that. If suppose you had 10,000 people and they went out and they read 10,000 different books, and after they each read one book, all of them know what's in all the books. We could get to be very smart that way. And that's what these things are doing. And so it makes them far superior to us.
There's some schooling that we're trying to do that, but not in a way.
But education is just hopeless. I mean, it's hardly worth paying for.
Except University of Toronto and Stanford.
I've tried to explain to friends that Jeff has a very sarcastic sense of humor, and if you spend enough time around it, you'll get it. But